I was always the one that would climb up the water feature naked and be chased by security guards. I was always that guy. But it was all a mask. And that was all reinforced through my alcoholism and taking drugs.
I'm Ange.
And I'm Beck. And we are Gold Diggers. It's not what you're thinking.
And we dig the gold out of everyday life stories.
Like today's guest.
Hi, my name is Justin Lippiatt, and I believe my gold is encouragement.
Honey, you're my sugar.
So we've got Justin on the show today. But Ange, before we bring Justin in, we did get to have a really great chat to him about some decisions he made for the betterment of where he's going to raise his children.
Yeah.
Are there any decisions you've made in your life?
Oh, now you put me on the spot.
3 children.
Yeah, well, as you know, my son's a musician. And I think there were some stages in his life where we decided to kind of push him in the direction of doing some competitions. And, you know, he was a little bit, I don't know if I want to do it. Probably because he was doubting himself that he could actually do it.
Yeah.
And so I remember there was one competition that we kind of pushed him to do. Yeah. And I did all the registration and everything like that.
And did you go,
as a mother does.
Surprise, you're going to do this.
And it was one where it was the Junior Snare Drum Championships.
Yeah.
And so he went in there and he did it a bit reluctantly.
Yeah.
And won it.
Oh, brilliant.
But then from then, he kind of like then went on to start doing other competitions and he got the competition bug.
So
and
that gave him the confidence
to put
his feet in the water.
Yeah, and then I think from then he just kept wanting to achieve more and more and more. And so it actually motivated him to keep attaining in music. And, you know, obviously he's an exceptional musician now. But, you know, some of those little decisions that we can make and we feel like we're pushing our kids.
Yeah.
Do you have any?
Yeah, like every now and then you get a little nudge of we should do something.
Yeah.
So we used to live in Brisbane and we got to the, like we had such a beautiful house and the kids were all great ages and everything growing up in this house. And it was a great life. But we got to this point and we just stopped and said, if we're going to move to the Sunshine Coast, we need to do it now so that the kids can make friends in primary school and take them through high school with them. Yeah. And so it was the last year of primary school for Katia, second last year for Jessie, and so we upheaved the whole family and moved to the Sunshine Coast for the specific reason of them making friends in primary school to take with them to high school, and it worked. But it was one of those risky things. It's like we had it really good, and then we did the big move, and now they've, you know.
You know what? It just made me think. Oh, I talked about a drumming competition. I moved country.
Yeah.
We moved country.
It's just that little detail of moving a whole country, the other side of the world.
Right on the other side of the world.
You just followed the first fleet over here.
I don't think I was quite on the first fleet, Beck. Thank you.
It's just like the pattern of English. They end up in Australia.
So, of course, there was that decision as well.
And Dara's girlfriend has now followed suit, and she's now in Australia.
She has. She's took the big leap of faith
Australia's
too.
the way to go, English people. So.
Yes. Yeah, definitely a better life over here.
So good. And with that, I think we should welcome Justin.
So welcome, Justin, to the podcast.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to work out your surname, Justin Lippiatt.
Lippiatt, that's right. Lippiatt.
Well, what kind of origin does that surname have?
Somerset in Gloucestershire.
Really? I was not expecting that.
There we go, yeah. A little bit of Anglo-Norman thrown in there. So, and Anglo-Saxon, bit of, you know.
Well, I'm picking up the South
pieces.
African accent, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I was born in South Africa and raised in South Africa, but my family name goes back to Somerset and Gloucestershire. So,
right.
Yeah.
So how long have you been in Australia for?
Since 2007. So what's that, 16, 17 years now?
Yeah.
Good.
And what brought you from South Africa to here?
After the 8th incidents of crime, decided probably best to move and to find, I guess, a safe place for us to raise our children.
Yeah.
And they were, you know, small kids then. And Australia's been a really, really remarkable blessing and honor and a privilege for them to be raised.
Oh, that's
So
good.
they've done remarkably well.
Yeah.
And they've got their whole lives
Yeah.
ahead of them and doing remarkably well for young people.
Yeah,
So
well,
I just wish I had the opportunities like that.
I moved from the UK for the same reason. Just it was a great environment to raise my son. So and it's worked out exactly the same way.
Yeah.
I was about to say,
Yeah.
so which country's better? But you've just answered that question.
Well, I mean, I know from a lot of people that have grown up in South Africa and have moved over here, it was for the same reasons that they moved as well. Because, you know, what was life like for you over there?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a dysfunctional home, but an affluent home in the northern suburbs of Johannesburg, and went to one of the top schools in South Africa, boarding schools, once my mum and dad decided that they wanted to part ways. And never really experienced crime as a teenager. You know, those are the days when we used to hitchhike everywhere and that kind of thing. So never really experienced crime. Went to the army. I did my national service for 2 years and spent some of that in Southwest Africa and Angola. Came out, worked for my dad, who was a scoundrel and a rogue. And ended up hightailing it to Greece for a year, running away from his associates. And,
Wow, okay.
and then from there to Israel for a year, and where I met my ex-wife, and then off to the UK for 5 years.
Wow.
Until she parted ways with me, and I ended up going back to South Africa. And
Yeah.
I got my dear Justin letter when I was there in Durban, and found myself at the real dark hole of depression and substance abuse, alcoholism. Found myself homeless, sleeping in the basement of a bar.
Wow.
Wow.
You've really given us a snapshot of your
Yeah.
life in a
Yeah.
few
Yeah,
sentences.
Yeah, so
Well,
there's a
lot
long
to unpack
story
there.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And here I am. Look at me now.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
amazing.
surprised that, like you say, you didn't really experience violence growing up, and you're living in Johannesburg. I was in Johannesburg earlier this year, and I've never felt so unsafe. Really, I think in any place that I've ever been to, in the hotels they told us we couldn't walk outside.
Yeah.
And then we were doing a train trip. We did something called the Rovos
Yeah.
Rail.
Yeah. Wow.
And we were on that, and like every time the train stopped, which was frequently, I have to say, because there were power outages and all sorts of things that were happening, load shedding they were calling it, all these things that were happening. You have to put these metal shutters up on the inside of your windows in the train because of fear of someone smashing the window,
Wow.
getting into the train.
Yeah, wow.
So to me, it felt like a very enclosed environment
Yeah.
where you couldn't really live. It wasn't like that for you growing up?
Not until sort of the 1990, I think. You know, it's the early 1990s. It was still relatively safe.
There were big wars in Liberia around that time, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was a lot of, Central Africa. You got a big drift of North Africans, Central Africans, all pushing down towards South Africa. South Africa sits on the point of the sex trafficking and the heroin route on the east coast of Africa, which people don't often think about. But so everybody, South Africa's the place, or Johannesburg's the place where the roads are paved with gold as far as the rest of Africa is concerned.
Wow.
So going back to, I think, not the mid-2005, there was about 1.3 million illegal immigrants used to come across the border every year into South Africa. So that just creates a melting pot of xenophobia, racism, insecurity, instability. So, yeah, I guess during my teenage years up to about 1990, it was relatively safe, and I think it's just went sideways from there.
And when you say that you experienced 8 experiences of crime, what were those?
House invasions, breaking into my car, stealing of furniture from the outside, trying to break in, those kinds of things. And I just didn't want to do it anymore. I mean, I just didn't feel like that was something I needed to deal with in my life. And ironically, we moved from South Africa to Melbourne. And in the first week, there was something I just couldn't put my finger on. I thought, there's something, I feel really strange, and I couldn't put my finger on. And it was just the weight of that constant stress around safety and security was gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't looking, at the. I wasn't looking at every stop street and traffic light for something to happen. It was
How
safe
long-
to be able to drive.
How long do you think it took to adjust to that?
I don't think I've ever stopped adjusting to it. I mean, I'm grateful every day I'm in Australia.
Yeah,
So
for
I
sure.
hear about youth crime and the troubles we're experiencing around that, and it saddens me. I think that there's always issues and there's always causal factors that sit around that, but ultimately, we're in a really, really safe and secure country.
For sure.
I'd agree with that. Like, my husband grew up in sort of inner city of we were brought up in England, and he was in the inner city and in quite a rough area of the city. And even now, we've lived in Australia 13 years. He has to go back and double check the front door and like double check there's certain things that he's just got into
absolutely.
the process of doing that I don't think he's ever going to get over.
No, I don't either. And it's those unnatural sounds in the middle of the night, that'll wake me up straight away. So I've always been a light sleeper.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, just making sure the doors are locked at night before I go to bed. And so you can't take things for granted, but
So then you mentioned a season where obviously then your parents went their separate ways, and it seemed to, like you mentioned then eventually, that you got into an addiction. What were some of the sequence of events looking back on your life that you think impacted that?
I guess I was a non-confrontational kind of child. I was, everybody kind of loved me, but I was not the popular boy, or I just didn't really fit in really well. And when my mother and father got divorced, I went off to boarding school. I got expelled for drinking and smoking marijuana at half term. But anyway, that's another story. But I think that for me, my dad being a divorcee then, and me being 14 or 15 years old, made it easy for my dad to think of me as a drinking buddy. And in those days, it was, common practice for teenage boys, 15, 16, to actually drink in bars. So, I started to drink a lot, and it became a mask that I could put on. So, I was always the guy that was the crazy one. I was always the one that would climb up the water feature naked and be chased by security guards. I was always that guy. But it was all a mask. And that was all reinforced through my alcoholism and taking drugs. So it was never really the real me. And my ex-wife, I'm married a second time now. My ex-wife always... she said to me several years ago, she said, I never actually knew who you were.
Wow.
Because you were living behind this mask. So I guess we build these masks and these facades around ourselves to try and help us deal with the world around us and to make our place in the world and to be accepted and to belong. But ultimately, to try and take that mask off your face, to try and get away from that, is very, very difficult. And it takes a lot of I guess courage and vulnerability, because all of a sudden the whole world can see you really for who you are. And are they going to reject me? Are they going to push me aside? Are they going to hate the real me? And that lure of wanting to put that mask on and be that person always comes back. But
So you really hit rock bottom towards the end of your marriage to your first wife, and that's when. So you had been addicted to alcohol for probably the most of your relationship with your wife.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah. So I think that it was just really part of, as it is in South African and I guess English culture as well. The pub is a very central
It's the
part
meeting place, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean everybody drinks at the barbecue and that kind of thing. So, but for me it was very heavy drinking, and so it started off as me trying to be somebody that I wasn't, and then it just stuck.
Yeah.
Then I couldn't really do anything until
How did you break out of that?
I had a divine encounter in 1998.
Yeah.
So literally, my current wife, Barbara, had thrown me out for the third time. I arrived at home and found all of my belongings in 2 black bin liners.
Yeah.
And it was a reality check for me. I just said, well, I need this last chance. And she said, nope, I don't like you. I don't trust you. I don't want to be around you or anything like that. And she had just recently gone to church and had her own divine encounter. And said, well, if that's what it's going to take, I'll give it a shot. I'll give anything a shot, you know.
Yeah.
And it was that was my turning place.
I love these stories, so tell me more. What was that moment for you?
The sad reality is that for so many of us, we think of a relationship with God as a sign of weakness, as a crutch. And I've got to say, he's the best crutch ever, right? But we see that as a negative, and so people steer away from God. They steer away from and whatever that figure may be in your life, but there is this external influence that has bearing in our lives. We are body, soul, and spirit. And so for me, that encounter was, look, I've tried everything else. I've tried booze, drugs, violence, you name it, and I didn't get anywhere. There was no fulfillment for me there at all. And there was no lightning bolt experience. You know, some people have these really lightning bolt experiences. And I say, look, God, if you're real, you're going to have to strike me with lightning because, you know, where are you kind of thing. But it was remarkable that, you know, every time I took a step of faith, he met me there. So it was like I was walking on this garden path, this journey of faith. And every time I put my foot down, there was a stepping stone, and there was another stepping stone. I didn't know what the pathway looked like, but it was all there. So for me, you know, having been through Alcoholics Anonymous twice, and quite well established in the 12 steps, the God of my understanding was how I got through.
So what does a step of faith look like?
It's about not knowing, obviously. And it's about having hope. I reckon it's about having hope. You know, faith is the substance of things, hope for the evidence of things not yet seen. And so sometimes it's this mixture of faith, hope, and purpose. We need to be able to take steps of faith into the unknown. It takes courage. We may not know the answers, but sometimes we just need to. I remember this quote. Don't just do something, stand there. And the converse of that, don't just stand there, do something. And you know, there's almost this paradox because we need to do stuff, but also not do stuff. And for me, you know, it is just this question of, I'm just going to close my, because I couldn't go back. Going back wasn't an option, so I just had to go forward. And I remember that I love this one thing where this story where this guy was walking along the edge of this cliff, and he fell off, and there was a little branch sticking out, and he grabs the branch, and he's hanging there, and he's screaming, you know, somebody help me, somebody help me, somebody help me. And then, you know, the big booming voice of God says, let go, I'll catch you. And so he says, is there anybody else up there that can help me? You know, so
It's a great one there.
You know, so it's a really big it's a big question. I don't know, you know, we would be here for hours trying to figure it out.
One of the beautiful things of the Christian faith is that redemptive power of starting again, isn't it? And being able to put your past behind you. Were you able to put your past behind you?
I have a saying that my scars are a roadmap to my past, but not a pathway to my future. You know, we carry the scars. The wounds may not be there. We may not be bleeding all over everybody, but they are there, and we can't hide them, and we don't wear them as badges of honor, but they have been somewhat important in forming who we are today. But we don't form our identity in God or Christ based on that. We do it based on His nature. I am accepted. I am valued. I am significant. You know, when you can take those steps of faith and just believe that, just start there, then, you know, the rest seems to kind of fall into place. But there's no formula to it. You know.
So we know with people with addictions that, often the pathway leads them to rock bottom. So it seems like rock bottom for you was, almost the failing of a second relationship. At that point, what was the decisions you made to change this?
For me, it was a T-junction that I slammed into. There was just a left and a right, a life or a death kind of. I just knew it was the end. So when I stood in the bedroom, my darling wife Barbara now was lying on the bed. I just knew that this was it. There was no second chance in the relationship.
Yeah.
And so for me it was, how do I get past this point? Because everybody had always said to me jokingly, and I believed that I was going to be dead or in jail by the time I was 30. And I was 27 at the time. So it was getting close. And so her salvation experience led her to a point where she said, well, if I don't give Justin another chance, he might walk out of the door and may never get saved. So for her, she did it out of another driver. But God had a plan all the way through, regardless of our motivations or why things happened the way they did. I still sit before you today as a God-fearing man.
Wow.
That's great.
And getting clean then, or the recovery, what was that like, the physical part of it?
As I said, I've been to Alcoholics Anonymous the first time I did that, and I had a sponsor for about 6 weeks. And then, he was standing up, and I just thought the world of this guy. And somebody stood up in our AA meeting and said, you're telling everybody such lies. We've seen you drinking and getting off your face in Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. So I used to go on business trips to drink. That was the level of deceit. And I just, this is not for me. So I went back to drinking. And then the second time I was encouraged to go back to AA, I was the blue-eyed boy because nobody was having the kind of blackouts I was having, sometimes missing whole days of work, that kind of thing. And so I started smoking marijuana and taking drugs as a substitute. And that was too expensive and illegal, so I went back to alcohol. And when I got saved, I actually stopped drinking, taking drugs, smoking. My current wife and I stopped sleeping together on April 1st, 1998. I always said it's April Fool's Day for the devil, because that's from that part. It was very, very difficult for me. It was very, very difficult. The friends evaporated. Nobody. People would invite you and you'd say, yeah, fine. And they say, have a drink. I said, no, I don't drink anymore. Oh, just have one. No, I don't. And so, it just became awkward. And I avoided all those places. I couldn't go to restaurants because all I wanted to do was drink. So it literally took me about a year of distraction, finding things to do to keep my mind off drinking or the social aspects of drinking. And right now, I've never taken that abstinence for granted, not once. But I can go, and sit in the pub with a group of friends and watch the footy or go out for a meal, that kind of thing. And there's no impact. I'm not thinking about it.
Yeah.
But will I ever drink again? No, because I know it just takes that one drink to unravel the whole thing. It's that thread that you pick in the whole tapestry.
My husband has a very similar story in the fact that he had addiction to alcohol in our early marriage, and then had this miraculous kind of encounter which changed it almost instantaneously. But he still had a journey of living without it. Who was he without it? And you mentioned earlier that while you're with your first wife, that she said she didn't know you. I was wondering, did you know you?
No.
In that? And how have you discovered you since then?
I think that the amazing thing is once the mask was lifted off, I had to look in the mirror and see for the first time who I really was, and decide that was okay, that I'm okay, that I was completely flawed and broken the same as everybody else, but that was okay.
Yeah.
And that if I didn't belong, that was okay. I would find my tribe or my clan somewhere. But ultimately, for me, it was about I as I stand before the mirror, if this is who I am now, I'm just going to embrace that and be the best me I can be. Without having the external influences of, the wrong crowd or the wrong influences.
Becoming honest with yourself, really release that freedom.
And it's hard. It takes a lot of courage to know that, your failings, but one of the things I tried to do was to go back to families and friends, associates, people that I'd really hurt both physically and mentally over my life. Especially when I worked for my dad, who was a white-collar gangster in South Africa, and go back to them and ask them for forgiveness. And 80% of them said no. Got spat on, slapped, punched, and they said, we're not interested in forgiving you. You walk away from that saying, oh, geez, I don't know how am I going to live with that burden, but somehow you realize that at least I've taken that first step. The release is in the asking, not necessarily in the in the receiving.
Yeah.
So you leave this trail of destruction behind you, and which is what alcoholism and substance abuse, and it could be gambling, it could be anything. Any one of those addictive behaviors just can leave a trail of destruction behind you, and sometimes you just can't go. You just can't fix it.
Yeah.
You can't go back and fix it. So there's the consequences of those actions, first of all, but then going back to try and plug those holes or restore everything. Everything's going to be great. We're going to sit around the campfire singing Kumbaya.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen.
No.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
So you've got to face forward and just say, okay, well, I'm going to, I've got the scars. I'm wearing the T-shirt. I've been in the video. Now I've got to just make a life. And go forward from here.
Yeah. And admitting that to yourself and to others that even though they haven't accepted it, at least you've now done that.
Yeah, absolutely.
An open book for them, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And, and that's how I've gained my strength over time is the Lord has taken my weakness and made it a strength. So people say, are you celebrating your alcoholism? I said, no, not at all. I just want you to know because when we were at the pub, I don't want you to ask me to try and force me to have a drink because I'm not going to have one. And I don't want you to feel stupid. So for me, it's about I don't want you to feel dumb trying to ask me to encourage me to drink.
Yeah.
There's somewhat powerful, isn't there, about like being real with ourselves and saying, these are my flaws. This is who I am. Well, we might not even like some of the aspects of ourselves, but accepting that this is who I am and I'm loved regardless of that.
Absolutely.
It's a really powerful place to be. And from there we can build, can't we?
Yeah.
And build strong. It seems like you've done that journey.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things for me, honestly, has been helping other people on that journey. That has absolutely been one of the biggest strengths for me on my own journey is to be able to lean into people that are going through similar situations, whether it's a really painful divorce or really painful childhood trauma, or whether it's alcoholism or gambling or whatever it may be. It could be, I used to look after members of the New South Wales Parliament, and often, and I've looked after in terms of mentoring and coaching as a pastor, and I've looked after lots of different people. But for me, it's about doing life with people at the reality zone. Like let's just not talk frivolous stuff. Let's just get to the real nitty gritty of it, and I'll do life with you. I pick up the phone, but I'm also known as being pretty brutal at times because I just don't want to continue to invest in people. I love people, make no mistake, and I believe in people, but I personally don't have the resources or the time to be able to invest in people that are not ready to make that change or be in a position for transformation.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just got to call it quits and say, I can't help you at this stage. You've got to go your own journey. But, you know, when you've been sober for 63 days, give me a call.
But you're right about that moment. There's a moment. I've worked. My history is working with recovering addicts as well, and you know, and sometimes it's a very fine window where they're ready.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you don't kind of reach them at that moment can pass.
Yeah.
And then they go through another cycle, and you almost wait until they're ready again. But it's really only at that moment, isn't it, that somebody's willing to receive help or to listen to advice and to be journeyed through.
And you don't have to be rock bottom to do that. I mean, several years ago, I was mentoring a very senior business executive in Australia. I mean, his home alone was $12.5 million, and this was going back several years ago. And I remember him sitting across the office from me with his, you know, hands in his head, sobbing. And, you know, he'd been so successful in building this lifestyle for his wife and his children. But his scenario was he'd come home from work. Nobody would greet him. His wife's still married, slept in the separate room on the other side of the house. His dinner was in the microwave. He'd come home, have dinner by himself. His son wouldn't even engage with him, you know. So he just lived this very lonely life. He said to me, Justin, what am I doing it for? What am I doing all this for? I feel so alone. I feel so rejected. So, you know, it's not the number of zeros at the end of your paycheck that determine your loneliness. It's your own personal circumstances, you know. And so whether you're at rock bottom or whether you're at the top of the pyramid, you know, people still suffer. People still have loneliness. People still need to go through life. And I'm a huge advocate for kindness. I mean, I think I believe it's the best thing we can ever do in people's lives. And some time ago, I was on a bus from Mount Gravatt. I was in a suit and I had my briefcase, and I was on my way to the city for a meeting. And there was this, I always call her the green-haired goth girl, got on the bus, and these two young guys were giving her heaps. And as she got on the bus, and there was no other seats except to sit next to me. So she sat next to me, and she had this green hair, the pigtails, the body piercings, and she was just sitting there. And I was thinking, Justin, say something. Try and find something encouraging to say to her. I noticed her hands were she had pianist hands. I'm thinking, and the only thing I could think of was her boots. She had those big sort of boots, you know, like you would see that in Soho or Chelsea. Yeah, with the big buckles. And I couldn't think of anything. So I said, those are really cool boots. And she turned to me, she looked at me, she teared up. She said, that's the nicest thing somebody said to me all day.
Aww.
You know, and so, you know, it's just reaching out and touching people where they are at. I think
I love that. Kindness is so powerful. I'm a big advocate for kindness too. And we just never know, even just something like as simple as a smile or engaging with someone.
And what does it cost us?
Nothing.
Exactly.
And actually, it feeds us in some ways, because doing something kind and nice for someone else actually is what is part of our human nature to be that way. So
and you never know what people have been through or what they're going through on any given day. You can meet someone. And that's what I love about this podcast is we get people in here and we get the privilege and honour of spending half an hour or so with you and finding all this out about you. But for people we pass on the street, we don't necessarily get that opportunity with them. But that is where the kindness has to come in, because it could be any tragedy they've just gone through. We just don't know, do we?
No, I several years ago, I sent the Queen a letter. And I corresponded with her for 10 years until she died. And
did she respond?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, via her private lady in waiting, Annabelle Whitehead was her name. And I remember just sitting there watching TV, and it was, I think the last time I wrote to her was in 2021. And I remember just seeing her sitting there when Philip had died, you know, and she looked so alone and so frail. But she's a grandmother, a great grandmother. She's, right up until that space, she was a wife. She was a woman that had all these responsibilities and the weight of the world upon her shoulders. And she I just had to reach out and, say, hey, look, I'm praying for you. I'm still praying for you. I'm still, she sent me a card from Philip's celebration of life when he died. So she sent me a card just thanking me for supporting her through that time. So, we don't know, as you say, people that are going, we think of status and think, oh, well, they've got all this money or they've got all this power or whatever, so everything's going well. But you just don't know what's happening behind that facade, I guess.
I just love the fact you thought to do that.
Yeah,
you thought to
lovely.
just, the Queen looks lonely. I think I'll pop her a note.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I kind of do that kind of thing. Yeah.
Most of us would not even think we'd be able to do that. Where do you send it? Buckingham Palace,
Yes.
England,
Yeah.
like that.
Oh, there's if people are intentional about it, you can actually. It's interesting because if you want to write. Well, I'm just talking about Her Majesty, not His Majesty the King now, but. They give you guidelines. Send it to this address and address Her Majesty this way, because if your letter is read, if you don't follow the right protocols, they for some. I mean, I think it's just the way they do it. They won't do it. So
there's protocols for everything.
Yeah, they give you the protocols to follow, and then the content of it is up to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think everybody
That's
needs
cool,
somebody. Everybody
that's
needs
true.
somebody.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I often worry about people who go under the radar too, and lonely people who are just not seen because they don't reach out, they don't have their community. So that's also a big thing where we see beautiful community groups stepping in now, don't we, doing those things.
Yeah, well, it is like the modern pandemic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Loneliness. It really is. And even though we've got like smartphones and things that are created to help us engage more with others, I think it isolates.
It
We're
does,
almost
absolutely.
isolates
It's
us
artificial.
more. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
And you're looking at some of the younger generations, they're almost losing the art of connection, of how to connect and how to have deep and meaningful conversations.
And you talk about masks, and now we have social media, and there's so many masks that people are seeing. So young people are seeing these perfect social media lives and images and things like that. So then they pop the mask on too, and then they try to be that. But deep down,
I just want to be a
underneath it all-
YouTuber when I grow up.
That's right. I
An
just wanna be
influencer.
famous.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
it's not reaching deep under that mask and seeing the real them and saying, you know what, you don't have to be perfect to be loved.
Yeah.
Like, you are loved just as you are.
just
Yeah.
as you are.
And I think the more people become courageous and just say, hey, this is me, and I'm not perfect.
yeah.
Yeah.
And none of us
Celebrate
are, exactly.
celebrate your imperfectness.
That's right.
But on the opposite side of that, there is a lot more research going in the importance of connection
Yeah.
and community and building that. And I think there is more of an awareness that the responsibility is on us to
Yeah.
reach out,
Absolutely.
to be vulnerable with one another and to
Yes.
forge those deeper connections.
Yeah.
So-
I worked with in a bank, and I coached contact center agents, and one time I was doing this cultural transformation project throughout the contact centers and the bank, and I said, who's the most perfect contact center agent? And there were some metrics, and this lady came up, her name was Natasha, and I contacted the desk manager. She said, yeah, I've heard the name. She was honestly such a grey person. Like, she almost didn't exist. You would not know, if you had a team photo of the team, you'd only see the top of her head, or she was just one of those people. So I invited her to come and see me, and she came to my office, and I kind of looked at her and I said to her, I want you to be a champion of what I'm doing. And she looked at me with this complete distrust, and she said, why? And I said, because I believe in you. And sort of I almost physically took her back. And anyway, so...
They're powerful words.
Yeah, so I never spoke to her again for probably about 2 or 3 weeks. And the next thing, one of the managers that reported to me said to me, "Have you seen the newspaper?" I said, "No." He said, "Have a look." So I opened the newspaper. There she was. She just volunteered for this community organisation, and she looked amazing. And the next thing, she was championing all the things in the contact centre. And anyway, one of the executives of the bank said to her, "Natasha, what was this big change? What happened in your life? What's happened?" She said, "I am significant at home.
Yeah.
I'm significant at work, and I'm significant in the community." And he said, "That is absolutely incredible. And what brought about that change?" She said, "Justin said some really special words, and he said, 'I believe in you.'"
Amazing.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just as simple as that, isn't
Absolutely.
it, to help people on their recovery journey?
It's not even recovery. It's just everybody's journey.
Yeah.
Time for some gold, Ange.
Justin, I'm so inspired by your story for that reason. Is like the background that you've come out of, the trauma that you've come out of, even the addiction. Often we hear that history repeats itself. And you've completely broken that. And you came to a point in your life where this is life or death. And I think they're some of our most finest moments in life. And you chose wisely, and you took the right steps in order to change your future. And how that is now impacting other people, that you're helping other people on that journey. I think it grows us as people, and we become the better people for helping others through that as well.
Absolutely.
And so I just, there's something about you that is just like, there's a strength about you, but it's not that you're trying to force it or you're trying to think it or you're naturally perhaps the way that you were brought up and you're having to act on these things in order to live a good life. It's become part of who you are. It's almost changed your DNA, if you like. And so, and obviously your faith is such ingrained in you that it just flows out of you in everything that you're saying. And so that sense of hope that you can change your future is amazing gold about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I would have to say the things that really stood out to me were when you talked about masks, and once you took that mask off and were able to be honest with yourself and with the world of who you are and what you've been through, then that actually gave you the power, not actually the power, but the strength and the ability to lean on God. Once you met with God, to be able to give him all of that and then allow him to use those weaknesses to be your strength in your life. And then you have this real humility about you, and you've done so much, but it's true that the greatest of all are the servants of all. And having that servant heart is definitely something that you've been able to impart into others and help others know that they are loved regardless. They're loved without a mask, and to be able to truly accept yourself as you are, and to help others accept themselves as they are, and then to build from there as that as their foundation is a real priceless gift, I think. So for you to be able to impart that to others because of your faith, because of what you've learnt, and because you've learnt that skill of being able to take that mask off and offer your true self to others, then that I would say is your superpower.
Oh, thank you. Wow.
Yeah, thank you so much for being with us today, Justin.
No problem.
I
Thank you
appreciate
so
you
much.
sharing your story, and we know it's going to impact
lovely.
and touch. Thank
Oh,
you,
I hope
it's been wonderful.
Thanks for listening to the Gold Diggers podcast.
If you want to be a guest or you want to reach out, you can do so on our website, thegolddiggers.com.au.
We also share behind the scenes footage and giveaways across our socials on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube and Facebook.
We dig for gold every Wednesday, so subscribe and follow now so that you don't miss a story that could change your life.
I need your my sugar.